Canto 5. Stepping through the darkness, Cal was met with bright fluorescent lights. His eyes squinted from the stark difference. Adjusting, he realized he was standing in a waiting room in what appeared to be a doctor's office. Seats with scratchy blue fabric and white oak armrests were placed throughout, but no one but Cal and Sophie were in it. There were stock photos on the wall of winter branches with snow on them. Also the smell. It was the antiseptic smell one can only find at a hospital. It nearly lived in the air, it was so strong. Across from them was a receptionist's desk, and sitting behind it was a well-dressed man. Way too formal for a doctor's office. He appeared to be flipping through a magazine and hadn't noticed the two of them at all. Sophie, still holding Cal's hand, walked them both right up to the desk. That's when the man looked up. "Well, Sophie," he gleefully greeted, "who do you have for me today?" Then he barely glanced at Cal when his joy was replaced with disgust. "No, take him back. You might have convinced Charon to let him through, but you're not married to me." Letting go of Cal's hand, Sophie dropped her elbows on the counter and rested her chin on her newly woven fingers. In the syrupy, sweetest voice she could muster, she said, "Chris." "Minos," he corrected, and Cal could hear that he didn't like being called by what he assumed was his birth name. "Whatever," Sophie dismissed. "You should know that Fred doesn't break the rules for me. This one comes from Lucy." Minos' eyes grew wide. "Don't throw out divine names like that." "I don't," she seriously responded, but it was clear both believed what she was saying already. "If this was me, I'd say open the door at the end. But I've got to give him the full tour by her order." The Minos looked like he was choking on the letter F, and Cal felt someone should slap him on the back or something to break the word free from his throat. Sophie, however, just looked amused. "Yep," she confirmed, "the full tour. So put that in and we'll be on our way." Picking up the chart to his right, Minos muttered unbelievingly, "The full tour." He began checking everything there was to check on the chart. Cal tried to crane his head up to see what he was checking, but the page looked like gibberish. Another point for this being a nightmarish dream. No one can actually read in a dream. "Good luck," he said with a dull finality as he dropped the chart in a slot to his left. Sophie nodded approval. "Thanks." Then she held out her watch for Minos. Minos had already picked up his magazine and was about to open it up and froze. "You won't make it. You don't have enough time." "Have you ever walked the breadth of hell before?" Sophie asked. "Well, no," Minos confessed. "I have," she pointedly answered. "So let me decide what I can or can't do or have done beyond that door." Minos turned his gaze to Cal. "But he hasn't." Then, talking directly to Cal, he added, "You'll be fine. Eventually." "Stop," Sophie ordered, grabbing Cal's sleeve and pulling him to the door to the right of the receptionist's desk. To Cal, she practically yelled, "Do you want to spend eternity in a waiting area?" Dumbly, Cal shook his head, but her question made him wonder. Where would he want to spend eternity? If he had been asked the question even a day ago, he would have said working. He wouldn't even have thought about it, wouldn't have questioned it. Now he wondered why he didn't. He didn't actually like the trinkets. He had no love for the musty smell that came from the antique store. In fact, he actually appreciated the waiting room far more than the store. This was fresh and clean. Then we need to get moving, Sophie replied, unaware of the deep thoughts of that her question had sparked. Throwing her hand up in farewell, she then opened the door and walked through with Cal, not even giving him a chance to say goodbye. They had no more walked through the door than Sophie asked, "What do you see?" Then the door shut, causing Cal to jump. What Cal saw was a campground, and not just any campground. It was his favorite campground. "I never thought I'd see this place again," he said to himself. He went to take in an earthy breath, but was disappointed because while there were tons to see, there was no smell. Still, it was exciting. "I used to come here all the time with my friends. You know, before the antique shop." Nearby, there was a guy sitting at a roaring fire. Even though the smoke was coming their way, he could not smell it. It was like he had COVID again, an uncomfortable feeling he didn't particularly like. Looking closer at the guy, he realized he had a disconcerted look on his face. It appeared he was attempting to roast a marshmallow. Cal would watch him get everything ready as he carefully put the marshmallow on the stick and put the stick into the fire. Turning carefully, everything started off well. The marshmallows started to softly brown. Then right before it was done, the whole thing caught fire, burning to a crisp. Agitated, the man pulled the cinder off the stick and began again. The next time, instead of burning to a crisp, the whole marshmallow fell off into the fire. Cal stared, transfixed by the man's agony. "Where did your friends go?" Sophie asked, with a hint of hurry in her voice. "Oh, here, of course," Cal answered as the man prepped a new marshmallow. I can't see here." "You know what? It doesn't." Cal would have stared at the marshmallow man, but just to the left of his view, there was another man sitting at a creek. It was very clear the water was brimming with fish. You could sometimes see one pop out of the water for lack of space. There was a man with a fishing pole next to the water. Not being a fisher himself, Cal had no idea what the man was doing to his bait, but it was clear he was immersed in his hook in some way. Then he dropped his line into the water. The fishing man's face first was intense, but slowly took on a soured look, as it was clear no fish were biting the line. Finally, he pulled it back and started messing with the hook once more. These two things were relatively normal compared to a couple that then caught his eye. Sitting on two stumps was a kilted-clad man with long braided hair that looked like he was missing from some Highland games. Sitting next to him was a woman in a black power suit, her hair up in a tight bun, her makeup flawless. "What is this place?" he asked as the woman ran her finger down the kilt-wearing man's thigh. "This is where carnal desire comes to die," Sophie absently said. "Fishing and cooking are carnal?" Cal unbelievingly questioned, not questioning what was happening between the Scottish man and the businesswoman. What they were doing was absolutely carnal, and it had moved beyond thighs. He turned his gaze from their event and looked at Sophie. She had taken on a fear that he first saw earlier. She was taking uneven breaths and looking at a tent that hadn't drawn Cal's attention. "What do you see?" Cal asked. "None of your business," she curtly responded. She pierced her lips and looked down. "Sorry. This place can be a little uncomfortable. It was one of my levels of hell." She made a beeline for the tent she was spying, grabbed a bucket of water on the table, and poured it over the fire. Cal hadn't realized that the fire was dangerously close to the tent. "That's better," she said, clearly relieved by dousing the flame. Returning to Cal, she added, "It's carnal because they're all empty pleasures, meant to draw us away from one another and God." He pointed to the two strange companions who were now all over one another. "They seem to be drawing together," he remarked, as they were frantically kissing one another all over. "Oh, it's only her. He's a book character. That one is more carnal in the classic sense. She wants to have a relationship with something she's not allowed to have. She can do anything she wants to that character, and he'll allow it. The catch is, she can't feel any of it. Not a touch, not a breath." That's when Cal realized he not only lacked a smell, but also sound. No frogs or cicadas droning in the distance. No birds talking to one another up in the trees. No crackling of the fire or sound of the burbling brook. Nothing. He longed for it, and he realized why. This place was the very first place he went camping with his friends. They were all in high school and had no idea what they were doing. He smiled as he recalled how they had tents but no sleeping bags. They had this archaic fire starter, but no one knew how to use it, so they had no fire. Because they had no fire, they couldn't cook their food. But that wouldn't have mattered anyway, because none of them considered bringing anything that could have been used to cook the food. Still, it was an experience all of them cherished. While eating raw veggies and marshmallows around a dead fire ring, they laughed. That night, they all went into one tent and piled on top of one another to keep warm. The missing smells and sounds were reminders of them. A waft of eggs and bacon hit his nostrils. A fire pit cracked, and he swore somewhere he heard a group of friends laughing. All the noises and smells were now present. He smiled wider. "Ah, you broke it too. Better, isn't it?" Sophie began walking, giving Cal no time to appreciate what he was seeing and feeling. He began hurriedly following behind. "Yeah," he confessed, "but it made me realize I miss my friends." From ahead, she said back, "If you're doing it right, every level will make you realize something." "What about you?" Cal asked before he could stop himself. He was interested in her story. All he knew about her was her job and that she was married, a marriage that apparently didn't part with death. That was another question. She had said she had been living once. When and how did she die? She stopped, turning around. Her face had taken on a sadness that broke Cal's heart and made him not want to know. "All you need to know is I act in love and did act, as I understood it, in love. You don't need to know me to do any of these levels." Squinting off in the distance, she pointed. "The next level is over there."